How did the clients impact them? Well, the clients impact good architects in this manner. Architects that I call good, that I approve of, you know. Well, I don't approve of everybody. Follow principles which are modernist principles. Now, I'm going to just be distracted for a minute, Keith, just to say that the modernist principles have been defined now by a group of which I was a member, and Jack Carpenter, who is here tonight, is a member. And Keith sat in on when he could. He didn't have enough time to really give a lot to us, but he was helpful. And we have defined modernism. And so the principles of modernism, there isn't time for you to hear about that. But this was what the firm stood for, the principles we stood for in the design and execution of buildings. So to answer Keith, one of the basic principles is the complete, as much as possible, understanding of your client, your client's needs, physical needs, emotional needs, financial needs, of course. But each client in our office, in our work, in our projects, by necessity has to contribute a lot to the knowledge that we've used to then execute work that is fitting for that client. Am I getting there some way?
Yes. Would you use, let's use UC San Diego as a client. You've built a number of projects there, and they didn't happen in a vacuum just in your office. How was the relationship with a multi-decade, multi-project like UC San Diego? How did the design work ultimately come as a marriage between client and architect?
Well, to answer that, it is a little difficult, and I'll tell you why. The University of California, San Diego, like other institutions of its kind, has departments which set up the program down to the point of telling you where the light fixtures go and the light plugs for your razor or whatever you're doing. And they define the size and spaces and how many square feet and all that mundane information. But there is, at least when I was working at the university, and I worked at UCSD before it was University of California, I did a project up there, until, 1970 we did the faculty club after that. I can't remember what date it was. Last project was the faculty club at UCSD. But they had a programming department, but they did not have a method of ascertaining the subtleties of what was going to happen inside a given building. And the emotional needs that discipline in that building generated and needed. And there were a great many things that architects were handed these programs, but they didn't know a damn thing about what was really going to happen, about the subtleties of what goes on in these disciplines. And so I did the Student Union Aztec Center at San Diego State University, and the man representing the university, a man by the name of Harvey Goodfriend, was my immediate boss, you might say. And he and I agreed on our criticism of institutions of higher learning, like the university systems, of which we knew about two. And then I've worked in 3 other major universities also since then. But we agreed that there was a lot more to know about what makes a good building than where the electric plugs go, or how big the offices are and how many of them there are, et cetera. So we got a grant from the U.S. Office of Education and took a 1.5-year study to determine where the successful projects that what really addressed their clients in a way that gave the clients a sense of belonging and of loving their environment and loving the way it worked for them. And we got this report together and published it, and I'm sure it got into the Library of Congress, but it's lost back there somewhere, wherever it is. And nothing ever came of it. But there are institutions. There's a community college called Foothill Community College up in Palo Alto area, where the community feels a relationship, a warm and loving relationship with that school, feels that the school is good for the community and good for the things that they relate to. The faculty, when we interviewed them, they were just enthusiastic about their jobs and the way the buildings worked for them and for the students. And, you know, it was just thrilling to be there. And we did a lot of time. We'd always go in, first thing we did was to see the president of the university and get his impression of how things were. And then we'd work our way down through the deans and the faculty and end up with the custodians and the students and the community. Well, Foothill just stood out as being an immense success. And how did they get there? The question was, how did they get there? The answer was not simple, but we found it out. They took 1.5 years to program that facility with administrative people, with secretaries, with students, with faculty. And they ascertained the things that made the environment, the educational environment for that school so successful, because they had an immense amount of success with students. They had graduates who just said, this has got the greatest education that I ever could have imagined having, and an educational experience. So is this getting somewhere with your question?